The shocking UFO encounter, February 1942, over Los Angeles, California. This is known as the Battle of Los Angeles, also known as the Great Los Angeles Air Raid. It's the name given by contemporary sources to the rumored attack by Japan and subsequent anti-aircraft artillery barrage, which took place late February 24th to early February 25th, 1942, over Los Angeles, California. It was a craft, quite big, over Los Angeles, and over 1,500 rounds were shot at it, but it was somehow protected by some kind of an outer shelling that made it impermeable to bullets being shot at it. Now, the incident occurred less than 3 months after the United States entered World War II in response to the Japanese Navy, and one day after the bombardment of Elwood, February 23rd. Initially, the target of the aerial barrage was thought to be an attack force from Japan, but speaking at a press conference after that, the Secretary of Navy, Frank Knox, called the incident a false alarm. When documenting the incident in 1949, the United States Coast Artillery Association identified it as a meteorological balloon set up at 1 a.m. that started all the shooting, and concluded that once the firing started, imagination created all kinds of targets in the sky and everyone joined in. In 1983, the U.S. Air Force history attributed the event to a case of war nerves triggered by a lost weather balloon and exacerbated by stray flares and shell bursts from adjoining batteries. Now, this was after the December 7th, 1941 bombing of Pearl Harbor. So this was just a little bit later, February 23rd, February. Paranoia continued to mount. During President Franklin D. Roosevelt's fireside chats, Japanese submarine I-17 surfaced near Santa Barbara and shelled Elwood oil field. Although damage was minimal, only $500 in property damages, no injuries. But alarms were raised. On February 24th, 1942, Naval Intelligence issued warning that an attack could be expected within 10 hours. In the evening that evening, a large number of flares and blinking lights were reported from the vicinity of defense plants. An alert was called at 7:18 p.m. and was lifted at 10:23 p.m. Renewed activity began early in the morning of the 25th. An air raid siren sounded at 2:25 throughout Los Angeles County. A total blackout was ordered, and thousands of air raid wardens were summoned to their posts. At 3:16 a.m., the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade began firing 50 caliber machine guns and 12.8-pound anti-aircraft shells into the air at reported aircraft. Over 1,400 shells would eventually be fired. Pilots of the 4th Interceptor Command were alerted, but their aircraft remained grounded. The artillery fire continued sporadically until 4:14 in the morning. The all clear was sounded and the blackout order lifted at 7:21 a.m. Several buildings and vehicles were damaged by shell fragments. 5 civilians lost their lives from this, an indirect result of the anti-aircraft fire, and chaos ensued in the heart of this, the whole stress of the hour-long attack, the action. The incident was front-page news along the U.S. Pacific coast and across the nation. When the press responded, the attribution, the Japanese government, after the war ended, declared they had not flown any airplanes over Los Angeles during the war. And in 1983, the U.S. Office of Air Force History concluded that an analysis of the evidence points to meteorological air balloons as the cause of this initial alarm. Now, the thing is this, there is the ufology. If we'll look at, I'll try and find a link and give you the link of Carrie Cassidy's Project Camelot, where she's interviewing William Tompkins. He was a little child, and he was living there. They were actually viewing this with his father and his brother that night. And he says it was the same night that the Germans were bombing London, but this UFO was over California, Los Angeles. So here, the ufology on this, again, according to Wikipedia, the photo published in the Los Angeles Times, February 26, 1942, has featured in UFO conspiracy theories evidence of an extraterrestrial visitation. They assert that the photo clearly shows searchlights focused on an alien spaceship. However, the photo was heavily modified by photo retouching prior to publication, a routine practice in graphic arts of the time intended to improve contrasts in black and white photos. Los Angeles Times writer Larry Harnish noted that the retouched photo, along with fake newspaper headlines, were presented as true historic material in trailers for the film Battle Los Angeles. Harnish commented, if the publicity campaign wanted to establish UFO research as nothing but lies and fakery, he couldn't have done a better job. And in the meantime, I will give you the link to William Tompkins' interview with Project Camelot thing. Now, he says he's also is one of the men that designed the spacecraft for, secret space agency trips to various planets in our solar system. Now, you can take what he tells with a grain of salt. I don't know. He talks about Solar Warden and various other things that you can listen to if you wish. That's what I wanted to show you. That these are the pictures from Los Angeles Times from that period. And I'll leave a link to William Tompkins if you're interested to hear what he has to say. And this is another clipping of jets given the order to shoot down any flying discs in the news of that time. That's a very strange order to be given by the Defense Department. Now, the more people study this thing, the more confusion there is, more questions are raised. New York Times, February 25th, at that time expressed belief that the more the incident was studied, the more incredible it became. Quote, if the batteries were firing on nothing at all, as Secretary Knox implies, it's a sign of expensive incompetence and jitters. If the batteries were firing on real planes, some of them as low as 9,000 feet, that's how low they were over the skies of Los Angeles, as Secretary Stimson declares, why were they completely ineffective? So if these objects were so low over the skies of Los Angeles, and all these rounds were being bombarded on them, why were they being ineffective? It's because, as William Tompkins said, it had an electromagnetic shield around it, and it was shielding itself from, and nothing could permeate that shield, and the bullets were just ricocheting off it. So, why were they completely ineffective? Why did no American airplanes go up to engage with that thing, or even to identify it? What would have happened if this had been a real air raid? These questions are appropriate, but for the War Department to have answered them in full frankness would have involved an even more complete revelation of the weakness of our air defenses. At the end of the war, the Japanese stated they did not send planes over the area at that time of this alert, although submarine-launched aircraft were subsequently used over Seattle. And a careful study of the evidence suggests that meteorological balloons known to have been released over Los Angeles may well have caused the initial alarm. But then again, they wouldn't be up there if they would have been riddled with holes, obviously. Hence, the theory and the ufologists claim that it very well could have been an unidentified flying object. There for hours, that low over Los Angeles, and it was impermeable to, it was indestructible to the rounds that they were bombarding it with for hours. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.